Welcome to another edition of Bigfoot's Pad. Welcome to another edition of Bigfoot's Pad Paranormal Radio. Tonight's show is going to be on the mystery of Europe's Bigfoot and Bigfoot sightings. And on the host lines with me tonight are my co-hosts Brent and Tim. This is going to be one show you won't want to miss.
Between what we see and what we think we know and believe, there are worlds. There are things that we cannot understand. Bigfoot's Pad Paranormal Investigations team is in charge of the field. Bigfoot's Pad Paranormal Investigations team.
Thanks for another exciting show. Well, how you doing today, Brent?
Tired.
Just a little tired?
Yeah.
I just opened up the chat just now. Our thingy's going a little bit slow. You on the line?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, I don't think our other host is going to call in for today's. But I'm going to start with a little bit of news. Well, before I start with the news, I was going to say, for those in our audience that don't know, the NASA found a planet called Kepler-2, or 22, that they think has either some sort of extraterrestrial life could exist on the planet. So this is my first story. The United States military pays the SETI program to check Kepler-22b for aliens. The Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, or SETI, has announced that it's back in business checking out the new habitable exoplanets recently discovered by NASA's Kepler Space Telescope to see if they might be home to alien civilizations. The cash needed to restart SETI's efforts has come in part from the U.S. Air Force Space Command, who are interested in using their organization's detection instruments for space situational awareness, is what they call it, with quotations.
Yeah. So what they're trying to use? So what they're trying to use the SETI dish for the Air Force now, or is that what
they're using it to check out those new planets that they discovered that they think have life on them.
Oh, okay.
I think Nick. Hey, Nick, you there?
Yeah, I'm on the line. Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, I didn't know when you called in. I was discussing with Brent how the Air Force is using the SETI program to search outer space for alien life on that new planet that NASA discovered.
Oh, okay.
And that's what we were discussing.
All right. Yeah. Okay, I'm pretty familiar with the story of the new planet that NASA discovered. A bunch of people I know are actually talking about it. People that aren't even into paranormal, so it's a pretty big thing.
Well, Brent's our SETI guy. He knows more about it than I do, at least. Because his name is Brent Seddy II, after all.
Brent Seddy II. Oh, God. But
well, here's my next story. The most shoplifted items of the holiday season for 2011. With shoplifting is up 6% this year, it says retailers have so far lost $119 billion worth of merchandise to shoplifters, and 75% of the shoplifters are adults who have jobs, it says.
Yeah, that's true.
According to Adweek, it says the most 10 shoplifted items. Before I do this, what do you think it is, Brent? What do you think is one of the top 10?
Toasters.
What do you think, Tim?
Cool. Probably shirts.
What do you think, Nick?
George Foreman grills.
You'll never get. I'll start with number 9. Number 9 is Chanel, like purses and perfume for women. Number 8 is Let's Rock Elmo, is one of his number 8. Number 7, Ralph Lauren Polo. Number 6,
Lauren, Brent's brother.
What's that?
He said Ralph Polo, like Brent's brother.
Oh, no, I said Ralph Lauren.
Ralph Polo.
Ralph Lauren. Then there's Axe deodorant. Then there's Gillette razor heads. The iPhone 4 is number 4. Number 3 is electric tools. You'll never guess what number 1 is. Dun, dun, dun. Filet mignon steak, it says, is number 1.
Wow, that is random. I didn't think of that at all.
You didn't think you want to go to get some filet mignon, Nick?
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's good meat, and a lot of people make it around this time of the year, and a lot of people probably don't want to pay the crazy prices for it, so they run out and take it.
Well, Nick only steals Texas T-bone steak.
Yeah, I'm cheap. I have cheap taste. I only steal Texas T-bone and sirloin.
Nick only eats pigeon.
Pigeon? Oh, there's the good old sound.
Well, here's another good one. 19 black rhinoceroses recently took flight as part of an effort to establish new, safe habitats for critically endangered animals. The 1.5-ton rhino species has been devastated by poaching. In the early 1990s, there were only 2,000 black rhinoceroses left in the world, according to the WWF for Nature Fund for South Africa. And I guess it was saying that they had to airlift them to a diesel truck and then drive them to the new habitat. So.
Oh, wow. Do we have time? Do we have any time for a quick conspiracy news?
Hey, if you have a news story, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, recently in the past week or so, I've kept my eye. I keep my eye out on this type of thing, and it seems that the United States government has begun to set up FEMA camps, or like disaster zones, in 5 or 6 major geographic areas of the country. Now, Jesse Ventura did a special about this, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, where he said that they would begin to set up FEMA camps, like I said, in the major geographic areas of the United States, such as the East Coast, West Coast, Southwest, Northwest, etc. We really don't know what they're doing, why they're doing that, rather. Jesse Ventura said that it is a larger conspiracy for the government to round people up into these camps, like working camps or concentration camps in that fashion. So what do you guys think about that, the government opening up all these FEMA camps across the United States when there really is no disasters going on right now that actually I know of?
The only disaster, Nick, is that the Browns lost their game today.
The Browns, oh God.
But no, what do you think about that, Brett? You're a conspiracy guy.
I know a couple, like, I don't know, probably about 7 years ago, you showed me a video of those death trains that go to those, like kind of like what those camps camps are, like the concentration camp type things back in the day, and and I think those trains could be related to what FEMA's building these camps for.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Another interesting statistic, actually. Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say another interesting statistic is gun sales for this past holiday season are at the highest they've been at for quite some time. And the person who wrote the article I read said that a lot of this is due to the fear of the current administration and the government trying to take away guns and whatnot, and they're fearing a government action such as the FEMA camps. So people are arming themselves because they're afraid. That's an interesting tidbit. I'll throw another one out there. I actually have a bunch of news today, which is kind of rare, but
feel the Helgen might.
Recently in, I think it was Texas. It was a rural state. There were some people that stole some cows, and they ran off into like the plains or something, and they were hiding. And the sheriff didn't want to chase them down because he feared of an armed confrontation. So he went over to the Border Patrol, and he asked the government to use a military drone, an unarmed military drone, to track these cattle thieves down in the middle of the desert or the prairie, wherever they were, and they eventually found them. Now, the startling thing about this is the law enforcement now, domestic law enforcement on U.S. soil is using military technology against its own citizens to track them down. Now, my thought is, what's next? They're using unarmed drones to track people down. It's basically, Brent knows a lot about these. I think he's talked about them before. They're unarmed aircraft in the sky equipped with cameras linked to a satellite, which is fed to a computer with the government, and they can watch you from the sky. Isn't that correct, Brent?
Yeah, that's pretty much correct, but they don't really. It's not really a satellite. They relay it to. It's more just an antenna just on the ground. Like
it's an antenna.
Like on the ground.
It's a relay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I wasn't sure.
It doesn't really use satellites. It like it'll just have like an antenna tracking the aircraft, and then it's just sending the unmanned aircraft, just sending the video stream to the antenna.
Okay, I didn't know how those work, but they're using those now against U.S. citizens. And recently, the government passed a law which would allow them to call U.S. citizens enemy combatants, which allows the military to jail people for any indefinite amount of time without any of their constitutional rights. So this is kind of a weird chain of events that's been going off in the past couple of weeks, and I just thought I'd put it out there today.
That is weird. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you real quick, but the show says that there's only 40 minutes left in the show, but we're actually going to just go until we finish, so it'll probably be like normal time.
Oh, okay.
We had a couple questions about that, but because even though the time would go down to zero, it still let us go for like another hour, half hour, whatever we wanted.
Oh, all right.
But, well, speaking of drones, I was going to say, Brent, did you ever hear anything about those, what do they call them, those drones that look like insects they said that they were using?
Oh, what do you mean? Like, have I heard about them? Because I know we talked about them on a previous show.
I was going to say,
but
did
like
your
the
work
guy in the black
those,
suit at work tells me not to. Oh, I was going to say, the guy, Brent's thinking in the back of his mind right now, those guys in the black suits and sunglasses told me not to say anything, so I will just act like I don't know what they're talking about.
Exactly.
Oh, he's thinking this. But anyway, here's my other news story. NASA, the last news story I guess that I have at least, it says NASA footage of a CME hitting Mercury appears to show the blast of plasma hitting an additional planet-sized object nearby. A YouTube poster, Sinister, who called attention to the footage, speculated that the mysterious object was a giant cloaked spaceship of some sort revealed in the blast. However, scientists claim the object is simply an artifact of the way of the telescope and the way it's processed, it says. But I've seen the picture. This picture is it's pretty strange looking. You can see it looks almost like a solar flare type thing coming by Mercury, and there is something almost as big as the planet, or similar to the planet, and it's clearly shown in the blast. That's what I was saying. NASA says it's just a mess up with the camera, but it looks kind of like something might be there.
Huh. It's kind of weird
Yeah.
It's kind of weird how a multi-million-dollar satellite can just mess up.
Yeah.
Or was this with the Hubble telescope?
It didn't say which one. It just, I only wrote down like a little snippet of the story. Well, you said you had a little bit of a news story you wanted to share, Tim, or are you good?
Well, no, I'm good.
You got anything else, guys?
No.
All right, well, we're going to get started with today's topic, which is the European Bigfoot and big Sasquatch-like creatures. I'd like to start with a little bit of folklore here, a little bit of statistics. It says, folklore from Europe tells of a creature called the Wild Man. Like Bigfoot, the European Wild Man looks something like a human, but covered all over with a thick coat of hair, and it lived in the wilderness. Beyond these facts, there's not much resemblance between the Wild Man and Bigfoot. Wild Man could sometimes talk and generally seemed more human-like than Bigfoot. It says that's over several different cultures in the Renaissance and medieval age. It says that's what folklore says what a Bigfoot was. Now, it sounds like your average type of legend, but you have to think, the European Bigfoot, there's some sort of creature that they're talking about that I guess people were seeing or have said to have seen. And even nowadays, for instance, the sightings are rare, but I guess, you know what I'm trying to say, like, I think, unless I'm tongue-tying myself.
Well, the creature's similar to Bigfoot, yet there are differences, and those differences can be accounted for very easily. It's very simple. See, the North American Bigfoot and the European Wild Man, is that what it's called, the European Wild Man?
Yeah.
Yeah, the European Wild Man, they both evolved in different environments, and their evolution took place in reaction to things that were unique to their environments. So perhaps the American Bigfoot did not evolve speech capability quite like the European Wild Man. I'm just saying. Varying traits in species in different parts of the world can be accounted by due to evolution and the evolutionary path, I guess you could call it.
Yeah. Well, what I was saying, though, was you figure they would have to be seeing some kind of creature, though, to make these folklore legends, or just have a pretty crazy imagination to somehow magically come up with a creature that's similar to Bigfoot in many aspects. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, the way I have this laid out is I have a couple of different Sasquatch-like creatures and a couple of sightings relating to each creature. I don't know if you guys want to go over it that way.
You could do that. It's a nice organized way. And
The one I thought I'd start off with first is called the Fear-Lias. Now, the Fear-Lias is one that's very close to our hearts, so that's probably what we're going to look for in 2 or 3 years. Our first trip overseas. Anyways, and it says, the Fear-Lias, also known as the Big Gray Man of Ben McDowey is how I think you say that, or simply the Gray Man, is the name of a presence or a creature which is said to haunt the summit and passes of Ben McDowey, so I think you say that, McDewey. The highest peak in the sorry, it's hard to say this for me, Cairngorms is how I think you say it, Cairngorms. And the second highest peak in Britain, and it's up near Scotland, like up in that area. It's been described as an extremely tall figure covered with short hair, or an unseen presence that causes uneasy feelings to people who climb or travel on this mountain. Evidence of the existence of this creature is limited to various multiple sightings, and very few photographs and unusual footprint casts have been casted. Reference to the wild gray men in Scotland and similar creatures elsewhere in Europe, sometimes are called woodmen or woodwas, date back to the 13th century or the 1200s. And it says, some people say that they represent relict hominids. So you have to get this setting in your mind. There's a old mountain pass that's foggy because that area is generally foggy, and it's mostly a rocky mountain with few trees, I guess. It was where the summit is. And as Nick Redfern said when we interviewed him on one of our old shows, he says sometimes it's reported almost like a ghostly presence more than a Bigfoot in a sense.
Why? Because of all the fog?
I'm not exactly sure what they mean by that. I just know that they said sometimes it's seen as like a ghost, and sometimes they think of it as like a creature.
Well, I could see it being kind of like a ghost because of how agile it is in the woods.
Mhm.
So it's like I could see it being kind of like a ghost.
Yeah, I mean, when we do our own Sasquatch hunts at the various locations we go to, there's almost a ghost-like feeling just walking through the forest at night. I mean, in one place you go to, in our secret location where we have those really big redwoods in the forest, it just completely blocks all the light out, so it feels like you're constantly surrounded by a presence. And I wouldn't bet that's too far different from what these people feel when they encounter this creature.
Exactly. I was thinking, or what if it isn't a Bigfoot? What if it really is some sort of a spiritual creature, or even the spirit of a Sasquatch for that instance? That'd be weird.
Yeah. It's a skinwalker. No.
There could be a possibility that a Bigfoot could come back as a ghost, I guess, in a sense. I mean, you never really think of that sort of thing, but it could happen.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm going to start. I have 2 sightings of the Fear-Lias I'd like to talk about. The first one is in 1925. It says, the noted climber John Colley recounted a terrifying experience he had endured while alone near the summit of Ben McDowey some 35 years before. He says, I began to think I heard something else than merely the noise of my own footsteps close by. For every few steps I took, I heard a crunch or footsteps beside me, as if someone was walking after me or stalking me, he says. And he says he was unable to make out the source of the noises because of the mist and the fog, but he continued, as this is his story in his own words. The eerie crunch sounded behind me. I was seized with terror and took to my heels, staggering blindly among the boulders and trees for 4 or 5 miles. Other climbers have also reported similar experiences, many describing uncontrollable feelings of fear and panic, some actually seeing a huge gray figure covered in hair behind them, others only hearing the noise, is what it says. That sounds like something that we actually encountered ourselves. I mean, makes the story a lot more believable, because when we were doing a Sasquatch investigation 2 years ago, we were actually kind of the same exact thing where we would walk and we would hear footsteps walking beside us. It was like beside us, not behind us, but... So did you want to talk a little bit about that?
That immediately came to mind.
I said, do you guys want to talk a little bit about that sighting or our experience?
Yeah. Tim or Brent, you want to talk about it? Well, I can remember when we were going up that little trail, we were doing wood knockings, I believe, at the time. I think that actually was that recent promo video that we just released. Actually, I think that was that Sasquatch hunt. We were walking up the trail, and every time we would take a couple steps, we would hear something stepping right along with us. And when we would stop, it would stop. Or if we stopped, it would stop just a split second right after we stopped. So we would hear it kind of gather its footing before it stopped. So, yeah, it was pretty wild. And then we heard some whistles and some other type of phenomena. I think we might have heard some really far-off wood knocking back to us, if I remember correctly. But, yeah, whatever was in the woods that night, be it Bigfoot or a mountain lion, something was stalking us, and it was matching us step for step.
That was pretty crazy. Well, Nick's going to come back with us in the next couple of months. We're going to go back to that location, so we should hopefully get something good.
Yeah.
Well, here's another cool sighting. It says there's an author named Matt Lamey, and it says in Lamey's book, he notes a sighting of the Fearlias in the 1990s where 3 men caught sight of a bipedal creature with an eerie, inhuman face in a forest near Aberdeen, up near Scotland again. Several weeks later, while driving through the area at night, the creature appeared again and ran alongside their car at speeds, they said the car was going 45 miles an hour, it says. And it says trying to enter the vehicle as they would slow down. And it would chase after the car. It's also known as the Running Man, is what it says. I mean, that's in its own league right there.
Yeah.
That's Brent's question. What would you do if you were driving and it was keeping up with the car, trying to rip your door open like that?
I don't know. I don't know what I would do.
There's only one thing you could do, is try to avoid it.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeremy, we have a question from the chat room. We have from Tommy CUK. It says, have these guys ever seen any of the footprints they heard being made in the snow?
You mean the footprints that was following them, or the ones that we were just talking about?
The ones I think we were just talking about.
Would you like to talk about that, Nick?
Well, when we were out on our expedition, there was no snow on the ground, so we wouldn't be able to get any prints from the snow, and the shrubbery there is so thick, you need a machete to get through it. I mean, if at least a human being needs a machete to get through it. So we didn't go into the woods, like the thick brush itself, and try to find any tracks because of the thickness of the shrubbery, and it's pitch black out there so much that you can barely see beyond the the perimeter of your flashlight. Yeah.
Well, I know something interesting. Well, Brent actually, was Brent or Tim? The very first couple years back, probably like 2008, Brent and Tim actually pointed out we did find a footprint track right in front of where our camp was at.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about that, Brent, since we haven't given you a chance to talk so a lot this show.
Are you talking about me?
Yeah, you or Tim want to talk about the track we found, since we didn't let you guys talk very much this show?
Oh, it doesn't matter. I guess I'll tell it. Yeah, it was like a couple years back, and in camp, like we were just looking around in camp, setting up our game cameras, and then we noticed like kind of like a footprint in the ground, but the footprint was like so faded away that it was you could make out the toes and then the heel impression, but other than that, we couldn't really get a casting of it at all because of how deteriorated the track was.
And the soft sand.
Yeah, that too.
But
hey, Jared, can I say one thing?
What's up?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. From the chat room, Malcolm Wallace wants to say, he is asking, do we know the folks from, the Sanger Paranormal Society, and have we seen the facial imprint on the truck window of the Sasquatch?
Oh, yeah, we have actually.
I think I've seen the facial imprint, but I'm not familiar with that particular Paranormal Society myself.
I'm not really familiar with that paranormal group. But I know we have seen a couple of TV specials and articles talking about that. Well, I was gonna go on to another creature I found. It's called the Woad-Woes or the Wood-Woes, depending on how you pronounce that. The Wood-Woes or Woad-Woes is a mythical figure that appears in the artwork and literature of medieval Europe in several different countries. It's comparable to the satire or faun type of the classical mythology of the Sylvanus, or the Roman god of the woodlands, it says. The defining characteristic of the figure is its wildness, and it says from the 12th century, they were consistently depicted as being covered with long hair. Images of wild men appear in the carved and painted roof bosses for intersecting vaults meet in the Canterbury Cathedral, it says. So I guess they're saying that the guys who built the Canterbury Cathedral, they're saying that they seen Bigfoot and that they put the Wood-Woes or the Woad-Woes into the building artwork. And so there's also a vegetable-like green man, because the image of the wild men survived to appear as a supporter for the heraldic coat of arms, especially in Germany. It says into the 16th century even. And Renaissance engravers in Germany and Italy, it says, were fond of wild men and wild women and wild families. And I guess it was saying that several famous architects would put these Wood-Woes or Woad-Woes men into their artwork as, I guess, their form of sighting or to show people what they've seen, in a sense. So, I don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, I think that, that's expected, especially of that era or any era. People are going to depict things in their artwork that they experience. So back then the artwork was done in churches and on people's coat of arms, so people would put the sightings of the various Sasquatches, I say quote unquote, into their artwork. So that's very expected.
Oh, sorry, Brent got put on mute. Hey, Brent, you there?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know how long you were on mute, but did you hear did you hear my story about the Woad-Woes or the artwork?
I got to the part where it was you're talking about the heraldic arms, like in Germany, and then it cut out.
Okay. Oh yeah, well I was saying, don't you think that's interesting that they would see some sort of creature, or at least in their folklore they thought that creature was that important to put on their heraldic coat of arms and on their churches and artwork, is what I was talking to Nick about.
Yeah, that's kind of weird how they do that. I mean, if it's on like your arms, like your shields and stuff like that, as like your normal banner and stuff. I mean, it could be used as an icon of like something to fear type of thing.
Mhm.
Like in the something you know. Oh, go ahead.
Well, go ahead. You're good.
Oh, just like the whole like intimidation factor they can use against the enemies, and they're like, oh, what's that? Oh, that's this crazy creature that lives in our forests, and we have to deal with it every day, type of thing.
I'm not very familiar with the woods of Germany, but is there, like, nowadays, is there even woods that could support a creature there like that, or?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because Europe has been inhabited by people for a long time, and that place has been deforested very heavily, so that's a very good question you got there, Jared.
Well, I know Germany back then could have had that creature live there, but nowadays I said I'm not really familiar with if it could nowadays or not.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the landscape of Germany. Tim or Brent, are you familiar with modern-day Germany and its forestry at all?
I am a little bit. I know they're still one of the biggest, obviously secluded countries because it's, it's not really secluded, but it is because of its natural borders, with all the nearby countries with forests. I know there's a lot of forest. There's been a lot of reported, like, UFO crashes hiding, in the Black Forest and everything in Germany. I know there's a lot of Sasquatch reportings there. There's a lot of, there's even reports of, like, how do you say it, like Neanderthals and, again, we're talking, like, Bigfoot-type creatures, you know what I mean? There's, like, unknown-type men roaming the forest still, like the Almas, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're all over, they're all over Germany still, but I know, as for the forest industry, I know it's still one of the biggest forested areas in all of Europe.
Okay, I was wondering that.
Well, don't worry, Brent and Nick. You guys will you'll know what their woods are like when we investigate them.
Exactly.
Yeah, as you guys know in the chat room, we're currently deciding whether to go to Wales, Romania, Sumatra, or Canada for the summer, or next summer at least, for our first international Bigfoot trip.
Well, because we're going to all those places eventually, but yeah, we're just deciding which place we're going to pick first.
Or Papua New Guinea, too.
And Papua New Guinea, yeah.
Well, here's something called the Albert Ostman Bigfoot Tale, and this has to deal with the Woodwoods. It says, in the 1924, Albert Ostman, a Scandinavian lumberjack, chose a wild area at the head of the Toba Inlet on the Powell River for a combination vacation/prospecting trip. Somewhere near there was a lost gold mine he wanted to find or was trying to find. And from an old Indian, he hired, not an Indian, I don't know what you call it, a nomadic type person. He hired to take him up to the fjord. He first heard of the giant Sasquatch, a name which means wild men of the woods. These creatures, hairy though they were, seemed human and would carry him off, he says, and hold him captive for 7 days. And this was in 1924. I know Tim has a good theory on Bigfoot captures. If you want to talk about that, Tim.
So you're putting out Bigfoot what?
Where the Bigfoot capture people and hold them hostage, where you said your theory on the 1920s versus nowadays.
Right. Well, yeah, throughout history there's been many all throughout the world, mostly coming from Asia, but there's been tons of reports of hairy men or creatures from the forest that kidnap people and they force them to live with them. And again, my theory on that is basically, I don't really know what to think because I've never been captured by a Bigfoot before personally, but according to the reports, I know they say that basically the Bigfoots or Sasquatches or Yetis or whatever you want to call them, basically a lot of the time they said they're either captured, they grabbed them by force and brought them to the hills, and eventually they, either escaped during the day or eventually the creatures let them go. But there's also reports that I guess they took care, like the creatures would take care of them, like as if they were like parent types, like a parent figure or something. I don't know what that's all about, but and there's other reports saying that Bigfoot wants to try to mate with them or something. In some cases, I don't know what to think again, but I've heard all sorts of different theories about it.
Oh. Well, you know what?
It's been reported all throughout history in Canada, all throughout the world.
What's that?
I was going to say, Jared, what would you do if we were sleeping in a tent
and all of a sudden a Sasquatch just ripped open the tent and then grabbed Brent, threw him over his shoulder, and ran with him away into the woods, what would you do?
I would have to, like I was telling Brent the other day, I would have to call his family and to try to explain to his family that a Bigfoot abducted their son, and then they wouldn't believe me. But no, there was that story where those people had their campfire and they had their banana peels, and I guess the banana peels attracted a Sasquatch that was, to make a long story short without getting graphic, he was looking to mate, and I guess their food drove this creature in, and it tried abducting one of the people.
Oh, the banana peel story, I remember that.
That was one of the Bigfoot's Pad historical sightings there. Historical radio.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, and again, I know that really doesn't have anything to do with European Sasquatch, but we also study a very little well-known Bigfoot/Yeti thing that lives here. It's called the Sand Yeti, which lives here in southern Nevada. It lives in the hills in southern Nevada, and it's supposed to roam the whole southwest Nevada, of course. But we study this, and we actually had come out with some pretty conclusive evidence in recent years, and pretty odd reports and everything too. You could ask Brent and Jeremy that we heard. The first thing that made us start to believe is the fact we heard loud screams that come from a creature that obviously is not native to this part. Brent, remember in our favorite spot?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we were investigating, and all of a sudden we were like call blasting, and you heard just the loudest scream of all time.
Well, Jeremy remembers that he had to chase the car down to try to catch you guys.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that. I wasn't there, but I heard about it.
Forgot about that.
Like I said, it doesn't quite have anything to deal with European Bigfoot, but I just wanted to make that note, too, that we do study. And I actually come out with some pretty good evidence, too.
Well, speaking of that, there was a guy that we had on one of our Sand Yeti shows. His name was Smiter. He mentioned a Bigfoot burial ground, and I got curious. I looked up what he was saying, and I found out in Hungary, supposedly there's talks of a secret Bigfoot burial ground from, I guess, I'm not exactly sure, probably like before the medieval age, like the Dark Ages or something. And I don't have the exact name of it, but I was looking online. There's some couple of conspiracies of where it's at. I was saying, what do you guys think about that? Do you think Hungary would be I mean, you don't really think of that as a Bigfoot area, but I guess that's one of the Bigfoot hotspots in Europe.
Yeah.
Well, I do know back in France, there's obviously reports that there used to be, wild wolves that roamed the forest. They used to say there was a wolf pen that roamed the forest, but in recent years, now that we're older and I know what we research it more, I personally think there used to be, I forget whether it's southern or northern France, but there used to be reports of a wild man. We called him Wolfman, but now in recent years, the reports sound more like a Sasquatch. I guess, a hunter in the forest was cutting it, he was clearing down an area, like on part of his land or something. I don't know what for, but evidently he ran into a gigantic creature, and all he had on him was an axe that he was cutting the forest down, trees down with. So that's one of the only European reports I'm well aware of, but I know that was in France somewhere.
Well, I guess in modern days, it said all the way from Scandinavia, going diagonally down, all the way down into Croatia, it says is where most of the sightings are nowadays.
Yeah, those are the more remote parts of Europe, I believe. Western Europe is pretty much, like I said, deforested. So any habitat that the Sasquatch could live in has been eliminated.
Well,
so,
something that I think our friends in the chat room would like, there's something called the green-faced monkey. And it says, during a 6 weeks period over the summertime of 1996, says there was 15 reports in 6 weeks, I guess. This is the sighting flat. So there's an olive, green-faced, monkey-type humanoid creature with no tail running through the woods, reported. It says occasionally it was spotted swinging in the trees and climbing trees. In 2 websites, it says 1996 humanoid reports and Bigfoot encounters both note this remarkable occurrence. It says some people even say that they think it was a chupacabra, which is kind of strange. Before I say one of the sightings, I was going to say, what do you guys think about this? A green-faced Bigfoot? I mean, I've never heard of anything like this until I found these sighting reports.
Sounds pretty interesting. First thing, again, that comes to my mind is where the creature evolved and why it would have a green face. Perhaps it's just for camouflage to blend in with the greenery of the environment. But that's all I really can offer at this point, because I've never heard of something like that either.
Well, something I'd like to note, though, is that this was over in Britain. I was going to say, what do you think about that, Brent? We haven't really heard your thoughts on the really weird stuff like that.
I'm not sure. I mean, that is kind of weird how you know, they say it's swinging from tree to tree and stuff like that, and it has a green face. I don't really know what to expect. Honestly, I think it's like in between a chupacabra and like a Bigfoot, a miniature Bigfoot or something.
I guess
or
I didn't really try to break into anybody's houses or try to scare people. I guess most of the sightings were just that the creature was walking and people seen it, or it was climbing trees. It didn't seem like it didn't really try to bother anybody.
Yeah, like it was doing its own thing.
Not like that.
Well, for the big hairy man, I would say if it's a big hairy man dressed in green, maybe it's just Brett Favre and he's gone crazy and he's wandering the hillsides of England. Maybe he's wandering around dressed in his old Packers jersey and he's just gone crazy.
I got it. Maybe it's someone that ate a large pizza in a 2-liter and they were in a monkey suit and they feel sick.
Yeah.
But no, I was saying though, on a more serious note, why would its face be green though? That's the only thing, because I've never heard of that, even in anywhere for that instance. I mean, it would have to be some sort of a mutation, or maybe it's I don't know, because like we were saying, Britain is really a small place packed with a lot of people. Most of the sightings come from Scotland and Wales for the most part. So, well, it says that we have 11 minutes left in our show, but we really have 41 minutes left in the show. We're going to go on a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the European Bigfoot and some more sightings. And you're listening to BFP Radio.
Up from the depths, 30 stories high, breathing fire, his man in the sky. Godzilla, and Godzilla.
It's rich in chocolate tea. Chocolate flavored Bosco is mighty good for me. Mama puts it in my milk for extra energy. Bosco gives me iron and sunshine vitamin D. Oh, I love Bosco. That's the drink for me.
Hello, I'm Mr. Ed. A horse is a horse, of course, and no one can talk to a horse, of course. That is, of course, unless the horse is the famous Mr. Ed. Go right to the source and ask the horse. He'll give you the answer that you endorse. He's always on a steady course. Talk to Mr. Ed. Heap for yakety-yak the street and waste your time a day. But Mr. Ed will never speak unless he has something to say. A horse is a horse, of course, and this one will talk to his voice is hoarse. You never heard of a talking horse? Well, listen to this.
I am Mr. Ed.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
And we are back from a quick commercial break. Today's show, we're talking about the European Bigfoot. We were last talking about a creature called the green-faced monkey over in England. And while we're on a commercial break, I pulled up the sighting report of this. It says, a friend of a group that had an unnerving experience there was an experience in the summer of 2006. It says he and two friends decided to spend the night in the nearby Seven Quarry. After pitching a tent in the first quarry, everyone felt great. But as nightfall approached, they started feeling edgy and nervous despite making double sure that nobody else was around. It was a one-way in, one-way out type of location, they said, and impossible to navigate safely in the dark. And they were all alone. However, after a couple of hours into the night, the group was getting quite worried because they heard heavy breathing and heavy footsteps on the gravel around the tent, and was shortly followed by more heavy breathing, it says, almost as if two creatures were there. And something had kicked the ground right next to the tent, and it says the tent moved inwards and towards them as if something was there trying to put its foot through the tent, it says. But something that they couldn't recreate in the morning, it says, without first them seeing the silhouette of the person, I guess they were saying. And it says they spent the remainder of the night in the tent, not daring to leave until the sun was back up and the atmosphere returned to normal. And it doesn't say anything about seeing the green face or anything, but it says that's in the same exact area, like 10 years later, where the green-faced monkey is known to inhabit. So, judging by that, do you think that you would want to go look for the green-faced monkey?
Why not? We want to go to Papua New Guinea, so...
Exactly. Well, like I said, if we go to Sumatra, that would be interesting, too. Looking for the Ibugogo or the Orang Pendek.
Yeah.
Because the green-faced monkey, I don't think it's reported too much anymore, but for a while there, that was the thing. But it's more than 800 years ago, a guy named Ralph Cogshell in the Chronican Angelicana, I guess it's an old newspaper, it said that he wrote down the following thought-provoking words relative to a hair-covered human-like entity that was seen and ultimately captured near the ancient locale of Orford, England. And it says it's on the east coast of the country, which is sort of rare. In the time of King Henry II, when Bartholomew de Glanville was in charge of the castle at Orford, it happened that some fishermen fishing in the area there had caught in their nets a wild man, it says. He was naked and was like a man, but covered with hair and long, shaggy beard. He would eagerly eat whatever they brought to him, but if it was raw, he pressed it between his hands until the juice was expelled from it. He would not talk, even when tortured and hung up by his feet. Brought into the church, he showed no signs of reverence or belief. He sought his bed at sunset. He sought in his bed at sunset, and always remained there until sunrise. He was allowed to go into the sea, strongly guarded with 3 lines of nets. But he dived under the nets and came up again and again. Eventually, he came back on his own free will, but later he escaped and was never seen again. That's pretty weird right there. What do you think about that, Brent? Think it's possible?
Think it's possible to what? Catch a Bigfoot?
That they could have captured a Bigfoot in a fishing net 800 years ago?
I'm not. I don't know. It seems possible. I mean, if the net's big enough, I guess.
Because they never really said how far at sea they were, though. That's another thing.
Mhm.
But I guess they said that it would come back almost as if it knew that it was safe or had shelter with those people, even though they were torturing them occasionally, I guess. What do you think about that, Tim?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm typing in the chat room. What was that?
Oh, we're talking about a Bigfoot getting caught in a fishing net.
Oh, wow. That's highly unlikely.
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Well, I mean, speaking of being captured, did we discuss the Russian Bigfoot that was captured from the early 20s, or are you going to bring that up here?
You can.
Well, back in the early 20s, I believe it was, there was, it'd been Russia, so, well, of course, before it was, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was the 20s or before, but I believe it was Soviet Russia. The Russian army, or some villagers, there was a wild person in the forest, they had captured her, it was, they captured her somehow, and I know they said it was a her, and they actually tried to, how do you say, they had to, try to train her to be, live normal life and everything. I guess she had lived with them for years and years and years, and eventually she died. You remember that one, Jared? And then they tried to dig up her bones and everything?
I remember that.
Yeah, Brent, I'm sure Brent did too, yeah. I forget the whole story because it's been years and years since we discussed it, but, they got bones and they found, and I believe they did recent DNA testing, they found out that, it's not human, it was something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I forget the whole story on it, but I'm not sure if you had brought that up yet, Jared.
Well, I know you were talking about France earlier. I actually found a France report. It says there was a knight named, I know they have to do this to me, Calogrenant, so I think you say that. That's probably not right, but that's how you say it. It says he was on an adventure is the way he wrote it in his old diary. And it says he was riding through the wilderness of the Bretagne, I'm not French here, Bretagne, an area of dense swampy forest in northwestern France. And he said he came upon a clearing where there was a Sasquatch battling something called an auroch. It says it's been extinct since the 1600s. And it says the knight said that he was frightened and he actually ran from this encounter, but he wrote a 3-page essay on what he's seen. And it said that it was sort of like a Neanderthal-like creature. It had a club, and it says he had a roaring chin with protruding teeth like a boar, is what he wrote. And it sounds weird, of course, and out of the ordinary, but something that I would like to mention that I've seen on that website was this was a knight, and he's saying that he's afraid of a creature of the forest, which is really unlikely back then because he was trying to sound macho in a sense. You wouldn't think that he would admit that he was afraid of a creature in the forest like that.
Yeah. So what was the thing that it was that he's seen it fighting?
He said it was called an auroch, Aurock. I'm not sure what that is, but it says it's been extinct since the 1600s.
Huh.
It'd be interesting to see if that area of France is still heavily forested or not.
You want to go fight an auroch, Garrett?
I would. I'd fight a gun dog. I don't know, would you guys ever want to go to France to look for a Bigfoot like that?
I don't want to go to France.
Oh, God.
Just curious, where do you guys think is most likely where we would go look for a creature on one of our first international trips if we didn't go to Canada?
I guess Europe or somewhere over there, somewhere in Europe.
I just ignored that 10-second thing because we're going to keep going. But I thought either Asia, like Tim was saying, Asia would be interesting, or we could always go to Europe. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
But
I want to go to Papua. I want to go to Papua New Guinea, loaded with money, of course.
Yeah, we're going to go dress in expensive jewelry and clothing.
Well, that's one of the main questions I was asking Brent just for fun. If we actually drove up in a 2011 RV into Papua New Guinea, how long would we last until it was destroyed and stolen?
Probably an hour. We'd be laying dead in the ditch alongside the road.
Back on the menu, boys.
No, this one's more appropriate. That's more likely.
Gandalf the Grey is really there, stopping us.
Gandalf.
What if we were driving and Gandalf himself said that and he had the staff in the middle of the road? Gandalf himself stole our RV.
I think that would be the end of our. That would be the end of our trip right there.
Well, this one's the one that personally interests me, is the Romanian Bigfoot. It says, according to recent reports, the inhabitants of some remote Romanian villages have been reporting sightings of werewolves or Bigfoot-like creatures. It says, so strong is the belief in these creatures that a remote mountain village, it's near the town called Brad. It's been abandoned for years now by its inhabitants. Rather than continue to live in fear of the attack of these frightening creatures, the whole entire town moved out and just dropped everything. And it says there was a recent corpse dug up with the heart removed and eaten, it says, not too long after burial. And this is a quote from a TV show called Destination Truth. It says, the werewolf in question roams the isolated forest of the remote Romania at night, its dark coat providing camouflage. Descriptions speak of a canine that shares many typical features of the common wolf, but possesses an extremely broad chest, far larger than any known members of the canine family. It often rises up on its hind legs or walks on two legs like a Sasquatch in order to attack its victims. This frightening creature also produces an eerie howl/screech that can be heard for miles. So, what do you guys think of that one?
Well, I remember seeing that. It sounds very interesting, and I mean, there's even reports saying people believe that's even a Bigfoot too. So.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it sounds a lot like the Wisconsin Wolfman and that creature we did a show on a couple of years back with Linda Godfrey, I believe.
Yeah. I was saying, or what I was thinking at least, what would be that terrifying to make the whole entire village move out and move away?
And it's been there for hundreds upon hundreds of years.
Yeah. I mean,
there's still plenty of resources there and everything, and they just up and left like they were just terrified.
Well, this creature, though, it said it has a black fur coat. And that's kind of rare for a Bigfoot. You commonly hear a brown or a grayish color, really. You don't really hear of a pitch black type creature. That's pretty weird.
And Joe, there's the reports in our chat room that I guess they can't hear the show anymore. It started over, and once they can hear the rebroadcast of what we just talked about.
Oh, well, we'll keep going, though. But it said that the creature is said to live in caves, which is pretty weird. It says it lives in caves and has a putrid smell, similar to a Bigfoot.
Similar to Mike.
Yeah.
But is there any documented sightings of a red jacket with that creature?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
But this creature, it says, recently hit the news in Romania when it attacked a woman who managed to escape. This was in 2010. And in 2005, it says members of the Marine SCU family said they were arrested for trying to lay a supposed vampire to rest. Since I was talking about the heart was missing, it says that they were they tore a heart out of a supposed vampire, a century-old ritual in that area. I don't know what you guys, what do you guys think of that one?
Well, I thought the only way you could put a vampire to rest was to stab it in the heart with a stake, not take his heart out.
I don't know. Maybe they're doing what they did on Dragonheart. They want to become one with the vampire. They want to share feelings with it.
Yeah.
Brent did that once.
Yeah, Brent did that with the guy off Twilight. Brent and Edward Sutherland are one. Is that the guy's name?
Yes.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Is that Gob? Or is that some other...
That's Babe Ruth with throat cancer.
Oh, Babe. Sounded like the guy off Fallout, the ghoul.
Anyway, to get a little bit back on topic, there's something called the Brennan Lewd, or the Brenin, Brennan, LLWYD, the Brennan Lewd of Wales. It says the Brennan Lewd is also nicknamed the Grey King. It's said to inhabit the mountains of Snowdonia in Wales. Reports of its appearance vary. It's sometimes described as merely a presence, almost like the Fearlive, but it also has been reported to be a large, hairy, man-like creature. It's similar to the Big Grey Man of Scotland, which is considered by some to be a flesh and blood creature, and by others to be the spirit of trick and trickery. But it says, a terrified man captured amazing snaps of a mysterious ape-like animal in the roaring and the Tregadar woodland. It says Glenn Tregadar was embarking on one of his regular trips to walk his dog around the lake in St. James Park when he spotted something strange lurking in the woods. It says, he said, it sent a shiver up my spine and my dog started barking. You could have knocked me down with a feather, he said. He was so scared. In quick thinking, he immediately pulled out his mobile phone to capture the creature on film. He said, my eyesight is not so good now, but I zoomed in to have a look, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. At first I thought it might have been one of those panthers you hear about roaming around, but it was more like a bear. It was quite ape-like. It says it could have been a Yeti. So what do you guys think?
Interesting.
Oh, what's that? Can you guys hear it?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
I was saying, what do you guys think about that? He's going to walk his dog and looks over by the lake and sees some kind of creature screaming its head off over in the tree line.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, what would any person do?
No. What was the old saying, Nick? WWBD, what would Brent do, or was what would Waldo do?
Yeah.
I forgot what it was.
I don't know, I forgot. What would Brent do, yeah.
The 10-second clip shows an animal resembling a gorilla appearing to forage for food before briefly standing on its legs and disappearing into the trees while howling, it said.
Huh.
So that's
I never heard of that.
different right there. And I guess, along with the disputed video, it says there's a Ukrainian Bigfoot video that was uploaded in March of 2011. It shows a Bigfoot walking through some woods. I guess that's disputed a lot on the internet. And it says there's also a Luxembourg, Sweden Bigfoot video that's also on the internet that people frequently watch and debate about. So I guess it's really seen all over the place. I mean, the Ukraine is basically Eurasia or Asian.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Nick? Do you think there could be a Bigfoot all over Europe like that, or do you think it's mainly like in one little area? Like, would your guess?
Oh, I think it's all over. If there are Sasquatch in Europe, I think they're all over the place. I mean, they're all over the place they're all over the place everywhere else. In North America, South America, Asia, and all the other continents that are inhabited by human beings, there are reports of Sasquatch. And for all we know, there could be perhaps even some Sasquatch species living in the North and South Poles. Those areas are so remote and desolate, we wouldn't be able to really know for sure. But, I mean, there's reports of these things all across the globe. So I think they're all across Europe myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is a story submitted to us on our Facebook. It says, there's someone named Josephine Aldridge from England. It says, it was in the summer of 1994 while walking on Dundonald Hill, where two Labrador dogs suddenly went berserk as a truly immense gorilla-like creature, estimated to be about 10 feet in height, appeared some distance to the side of them, it says. The terrified woman began to pray, at which point the beast vanished, quite literally into thin air, she wrote, or into the nearby woods. And so she left the hill in a hurry. Not too far behind her were her whimpering dogs. So that one sounds sounds like it could almost even be sort of a spiritual presence in a sense.
I got one question about it. You said it was a 10-foot gorilla-like creature. Was it bald? Yeah. And did it have a goatee?
Oh yeah.
The 10-foot gorilla, you know. Our good old buddy, old pals. I don't know.
I'll buy that for $1.
We always got to rekindle old feuds.
Oh, what's that, Tim? Sorry.
What's that?
Oh, you're talking? What's that?
I was just saying, when you're done, you got to come to my room real quick. I found one of the best photos I've ever found of all time, and Brent did laugh his ass off if you've seen it. Yeah, Brent, remember the picture of Teddy Roosevelt and Bigfoot?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I found one by the same guy. It says how Brent Franklin really acquired electricity, and he's fighting Zeus in a duel, and he has Wolverine claws at random.
Oh, wow.
It's the best thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
But someone's talking in the chat to you, Tim.
I'm not in the chat anymore.
Oh, well. Yeah, Blog Talk is being a little crazy right now. Sorry about that, guys. Our whole entire episode will post after the show ends. But I wrote something about the Norway and Sweden Bigfoot that I'd like to mention real quick before the show ends. It says there's been a small number of reports from Sweden and Norway. A type of wild man, the snowmannen, or snowman in English, it inhabits northern Scandinavia in Lapland and the Arctic regions of Norway, Sweden, and Finland. It says it's described as a dark ape-like creature covered in thick, dirty, stinky hair. Its face is broad with prominent brow ridges, nose pressed flat, with a mouth that juts out from a huge jaw. Sounds familiar to you guys? It says, my first report comes from an area north of Stockholm, Sweden. There are lots of pine woods in that area, which sounds familiar. In the summer of 1985, a Swedish radio reporter talked about strange growls being heard in the province of Hälsingland. Two elderly moose hunters described how they had been tracking something big and smelly and finally released their dogs to give it a chase. It says the dogs came back with their tails between their legs and were terrified. So, I guess the dogs wouldn't track the animal because they were afraid of it. I was going to say, I know we talked to Brent about this before. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. Didn't you have a theory, Brent, on why the dogs won't track the Bigfoot?
I don't know, maybe because they're scared of the Bigfoot, that the Bigfoot's gonna destroy their souls. I'm not sure. I mean, a dog will only chase something so far until, it sees something that's probably gonna kill it and then run away.
You have any theories, Nick, on why the dogs sometimes won't track the Bigfoot? Like, even though there'll be a scent trail, they won't follow it?
Well, might have to do with the smell of the Sasquatch. I know in North America that in many of the eyewitness accounts there are smells that are reported, really, really raunchy smells of the Sasquatch. Perhaps the Sasquatch's very bad odor, I guess to put it in simple terms, would ward off the dogs. Maybe the dogs just take a whiff of this thing and it's like, wow, I'm not going after that. Because a dog's sense of smell is, thousands of times more sensitive than a human. So if a human is going to gag and throw up from smelling a Sasquatch, imagine what a dog would feel like smelling that thing.
Exactly. But a report that I was thinking, speaking of it, because we were talking about how the creature was like 6 to 10 feet tall and how they chase cars and things. I wrote, there's a case that says where a car was brought to a sudden halt by an enormous creature in the road. It says it was about 8 to 10 feet tall, covered in long brown hair. It says it described by the startled family as walking in a crouching style, almost on all fours, proceeded to cross the road directly in front of them, and it jumped over a wall that had a 10 to 15-foot drop on the other side and ran off, disappearing into the nearby woods. I mean, that's a pretty big drop right there. Do you think a creature that big would be able to jump like that, Brian, without getting hurt?
A big creature? Yeah.
Like, I was thinking 10 to 15 feet is pretty high, but you never know because the creature's so big.
Well, I mean, a human can jump off like 10, 15 feet high. That's like as tall as like your roof or anything like that. I mean, you'd still be able to jump off of it, but I mean, without like, if you didn't know how to jump off, you'd probably hurt yourself or something.
Yeah.
So obviously, the person, if it's not lying on the ground next to the wall, then it's obviously not a person.
Yeah. One last sighting I'd like to mention before we end the show. It says, it's over in Sweden again. It says, another sighting took place south of Bollnäs, Sweden. And it says there's a guy named Mr. Gustafsson is how I think you say that. It says, Mr. and Mrs. Gustafsson. It says they not only saw the Swedish Bigfoot, but also heard it several times and claimed they even found its droppings. It came quite close to our cabin and would kind of howl in the moonlight with its voice that reminded me of a human with a very, very deep bass, it says. We saw it more like a silhouette against the sky, and it never came so close so we could identify it properly. It says, it was huge, powerful, and gave the impression of being primitive but also intelligent at the same time. She also claims that it would whistle, and often they would hear an echo or another Bigfoot reply and answer the call frequently.
Huh, that's pretty cool.
I mean, if you were to call blast, I bet you would get something.
Yeah.
The only thing is, I don't know how you would be able to call blast, because I don't think we'd be able to bring that on a plane.
Yeah, that's true.
Have to jump through some hoops. Literally. They will make you jump through a hula hoop. But we're going to end the show here because Blog Talk's giving us a little bit of problems here. Again, I'd like to thank all of our guests that were in the chat room. I'd like to thank the co-hosts and different people that submitted articles to us and different things like that. And I'll let my co-hosts say their goodbyes real quick.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
And again, tune in next Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific for another edition of Bigfoot's Pad Paranormal Radio. We're going to be talking about the Philadelphia experiment and Project Montauk. It's a pretty exciting show, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Between what we see and what we think we know and believe, there are worlds. There are things that we cannot understand. Bigfoot's Pad Paranormal Investigations